Good morning, everyone. I think we'll start. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. The first morning session on the last day is always an effort, so it's good to see you here. Thank you very much. If I could call on Francesco Tornieri to join me up here, the co-lead, co-organizer from the ADB, who'll also help me chair the session. We'll start with opening remarks and an introduction, and it's with great pleasure. Firstly, I should introduce myself. I'm sorry. It's been a long week. I'm Dr. Rehana Mohideen from the University of Melbourne, Nossal Institute. I'm a principal advisor in socio-technical systems with an electrical engineering background, with a focus on inclusive energy transitions. And I'll be co-chairing this workshop with Francesco Tornieri. And back to the opening and introductory remarks. With great pleasure, I'd like to welcome the pioneer, a lead pioneer of this work that we've been dedicated to, committed to carrying out for more than 10 years, that is incorporating social inclusion with a focus on gender equality in the energy sector of the South Asia department. And a person without whom we really couldn't have achieved what we have achieved. We couldn't have sustained it for so long without his support. A world-class engineer, but also a world-class champion in this work of incorporating inclusive clean energy solutions in the energy sector. So with real pleasure, I'd like to welcome Priyantha Wijetunga, Senior Director, Energy Sector Group of the Asian Development Bank, with an incredible bio of academic and other achievements that you can read in your leisure. So Priyantha Wijetunga for opening and introductory remarks.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Rehana, you didn't have to say all these things, and probably the audience quite familiar to me. Anyway, a very generous introduction. Thank you very much for that. I'm delighted to open this deep dive workshop on inclusive clean energy solutions in South Asia, reflections from past experience and lessons for the future. A very warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us today, particularly as Rehana said, this is the last day, difficult to get people, and fortunately it's the first session, and I don't know how we will end up with the closing ceremony. And a special thanks to Rehana Mohideen from Principal Advisor Inclusive Energy Transitions in Nossal Institute, University of Melbourne, Australia, for co-organizing this group. She has been one of the most important persons behind our gender and social inclusion work in this in ADB. And a very special thanks goes to Francesco Tornieri, Principal Social Development Specialist, Social Inclusion, Human and Social Development Sector Office, ADB. Yeah, as Rehana quite rightly said, the architect of this work in ADB. And this session aims to reflect on the experience of integrating gender and social inclusion work into the ADB energy portfolio in South Asia and highlight key lessons for the energy sector, including replicability and scalability in other regions, not only in other regions, but also in other infrastructure sectors. This is part of the ongoing assessment of the efforts made in the ADB in the energy sector, specifically in South Asia Department, to address social and inclusion challenges in energy sector projects. This work has been path-breaking for ADB and a rich learning experience for all those involved. While the workshop summarizes the last 10 years of this work from 2014 to 2024, the initiatives go back even further to as far back as 2011, the electricity transmission expansion and supply improvement project in Nepal, a long title. And I can still remember I was the project officer, and Rehana and Francesco popped into my office and basically asked me, what can we do in terms of gender and social inclusion in a project like this? That was quite new to me. And, but I was very happy to see what can be done. And I asked them, you find what we can do, and that's your task. But you have the flexibility. As long as it falls within the overall objectives of the project, I'm fine. That's how we started this work. And it was fantastic. And from that time onwards, South Asia has been leading in this space and innovation when it comes to bring gender and social inclusion in its operations. And as you all very well know, it's not easy sometimes when it comes to infrastructure projects to bring gender and social inclusion. Social inclusion may be a little easier than gender-related interventions, but it's not easy in infrastructure projects, particularly in a portfolio where electricity transmission dominates. In a transmission project, it's very hard. But we found ways and means of bringing in and innovative ideas. All came from the team here. And that's fantastic. And things progress from there with the preparation of agenda action plan for the project. The project at that time, the agenda action plan was comprehensive and based on outputs of the energy project. The activities included things like awareness raising on renewable energy. I'm talking about almost 15 years ago. So, I mean, now, of course, if you say awareness, raising on clean energy, it's everybody laughs at you because everybody knows this. But at that time, it was very important. And increasing electricity access with a special focus on marginalized groups and women in these groups. Then energy-based livelihood training for women and training to strengthen the electricity users, cooperatives with targets for participation of women and marginalized groups, gender awareness raising for the project management unit, the collection of disaggregated data by sex, caste, ethnicity, and monitoring and evaluation, and many more. And these seem quite, silly now, but these were not as obvious 15 years ago. It was not easy. Even, making these people aware of the importance of gender and social inclusion in a utility, it was not easy because it was given and they thought it all happens automatically. And it was not the case. And so this was the experience we have had. All these activities continue to remain extremely relevant and important for an inclusive energy transition today. To a larger extent, this agenda action plan served as a template for the other project interventions that followed for many years. It is important to note that interventions also included marginalized groups, as I indicated. This reflected the context of the project site and context of Nepal. It wasn't an abstraction, it was based on realities on the ground. Then the South Asia Department, Regional Department initiatives also coincided with the concerted effort by ADB to increase the number of projects with gender-based interventions with an ambitious target set as a part of ADB Strategy 2030. It was clear that the infrastructure projects, including energy sector, had to pull their weight behind achieve these corporate targets because they were infrastructure, forms a huge component of proportion of the overall lending in ADB. Some of the highlights in trends over the last 10 years include, of course, 2020 was an exceptional year. The number of projects inside the energy sector that mainstreamed gender effective mainstreaming or addressed some gender elements peaked with 70 energy projects classified as EGM and 70% of overall energy projects inside for that year. So this is just one example of what we did. I don't want to go into the list because you will hear that all from our colleagues later on. There is wealth of learning from over the last a decade and more, as you could imagine. The task ahead of us, while we continue to examine and learn from this rich experience, is to share this knowledge across ADB operations in the energy sector and even beyond, such as transport and urban sectors, and how best to replicate and scale up across ADB. As I, just last week and the week before, we had two back-to-back workshops in Bhutan and in Dhaka on the same subject, and then with the utilities. And now I have seen the whole, all these years from 2011 to now, how utilities have changed their mindset when it comes to gender and social inclusion. In 2011, it was like very new, and we had to push all these things down the throat. Now they are the people who come back with, why don't we do this, why don't we do that? And you can see that change. And I'm very happy that the team over here did a great job in that regard. With that, let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Priyantha, and it's always a pleasure to be at the Asia Clean Energy Forum. As I have to read my remarks, because at the end of the day, although there have been lots of, we work together with the energy sector team, but there's always some certain elements of technicality of the things we've done together, which I'm still not struggling with. So anyway, forgive me if I just look at my notes. It is obviously a great pleasure, I think in the current context globally, but also in the current context of the Asian Development Bank, what we were able to deliver is a sort of joint proposition between the energy sector, infrastructure, and what we call now the human and social development sector. I think as Priyantha clearly pointed out, from our gender equality and social inclusion perspective, that's a bottom line. And I will try to describe the journey in a few points by deconstructing the path toward inclusive energy solution, from concept to implementation. The first, we started basically our journey from a concept that we used to call going beyond the meter. I think as a social development team, we were like engaging with the energy sector colleagues. And there was this constant, be reminded that energy is about, access, period. Hence, the word going beyond the meter was our basically counter proposition to say, let's stop, let's think whether together we can go beyond the meter. So the journey started in 2016 at an event. It was the Inclusive Energy Solutions Program. And basically we started with a conference in Rajasthan, which really put together the energy sector and the human social development team. Going beyond the meter was the topic. And basically to me, this conference basically firmed up the strategic shift from a hardware-driven model focused on energy access only to a people-centered approach, which prioritizes women and marginalized communities in their accessibility to services, in the benefit that they derive from, and the participation in the energy transition. So in close collaboration with, and that's an important point, and through the leadership of the energy sector group. I think most of the time in the gender and social development agenda, we have the tendency to be the advocates. And what we realized is that with the energy sector group, it was not working fully. So by putting the energy sector in the leadership role, we committed to institutionalize JESI with them across the energy operations. The critical entry point from an advocacy perspective was first and foremost the emphasis on energy access. And by that, I meant a simple concept, energy-based livelihoods. Basically, we were telling the energy sector people, can you just go a little bit further? Can you mobilize some technical assistance or grant resources to make sure that your project goes beyond simply providing access to energy? And it worked in certain cases, so we were able to mobilize technical assistance and grant resources. As Priyantha pointed out, the initial drive by the energy sector to even give us a small space was to comply with the gender categorization system of the bank, which is and remains a relatively well-established, if not slightly strict, system of categorization. So each time we were going to the board to present a project, there was some very strong feedback from the board member to say, you must do more. So, we leveraged on the gender categorization system, its strength, but also its rigidity to bring the agenda forward. So energy-based livelihoods was the way we started. And we realized that immediately a deeper understanding, deeper investment of our time in understanding energy sector systems, a concept that most of the social development people are not very familiar with, and the technology forecast. So these two elements, engaging with system and understanding technology by the gender team and social inclusion team, was instrumental in embedding social inclusion, including gender equality, into the sector operation. And to do that, we must be humble. So we were able to understand energy systems and technology forecast by engaging with the School of Engineering of the University of Melbourne, now Nossal Institute. They were able to basically carry out a range of a series of training and capacity developing events to give us the tool to engage, to speak the same language of the energy sector. So what was the agreement with the energy sector? Identify where exclusion risks are the highest, anticipate how sector reforms and transition affect different groups, and design intervention that are both social inclusive, but also, very importantly, as Priyanta pointed out, technically sound. So understanding that social inclusion gender must navigate a very solid understanding of technology and potentially positive and successful use of technology. So how did it roll it out? We strengthened the institutional capacity internally, but also with the developing member countries. As Priyanta pointed out at the beginning, it was an absolute, I remember, very tense meeting. Comes to my mind the Nepal Electricity Authority once in Kathmandu, where basically, a not necessarily well-funded company told me, I mean, you're talking to me about poverty, social inclusion, and gender, but what about poverty and social inclusion of us, the workers for the Nepal Electricity Authority? Remember, it was a very important point to make us understand that the institutional capacity was not only limited to the ADB, but we needed also to understand the complexity of the challenges faced by the utility. The second one was embedding JESI within policy dialogue and project design as foundational, not a supplementary element of sustainable infrastructure. The third element, mainstreaming inclusion across all energy subsectors. That was another things, that was quite common in a few years ago. Oh, I'm doing a generation project, forget about gender equality and social inclusion. Or I'm doing a transmission line, okay, let's talk. Oh, I'm doing distribution, let's sit. Or I'm doing renewable energy, open space for gender equality and social inclusion. So I think we were able to navigate what used to be quite a sectorial or subsectorial lending by bringing all sorts of gender equality and social inclusion dimensions forward. And last but not least, the inevitable need to document good practices in toolkit and checklist, painful sometimes to do. But the bottom line, as I said, was that our intent was to ensure that the message was very loud and clear. Across the board, each of the subsectors of the energy sector can open up windows or door to the incorporation of inclusive concepts and practices. So the second point was building knowledge and capacity for scalable innovation. So our efforts were rooted in knowledge and evidence. I think that's an important point, going beyond advocacy. We roll out a targeted training on inclusive distributed generation, and this is when I have to read, as I told you, gender smart grids and equitable energy access responding directly to the local needs. Particularly, I never forgot, we understood the decentralized energy system as an incredible, the concept of prosumer, producer, and consumer integrated. It was a simple concept for you in the room, but for us, were very essential to really bring a narrative that was understandable by the energy sector practitioner. So these were not abstract initiatives. And I see some of you in the room. They influence real projects in Bangladesh, in Bhutan, in India, the Maldives, and Sri Lanka. We facilitated sustaining peer learning, and it was a lot of fun, because sometimes these events are not fun, no. We were able to facilitate cross-fertilization of experience in location, which are very ideal, such as, I never forget, Jaipur. It was really a fun workshop where we really interfaced, where we really developed a sort of joint structure. In Galle, Sri Lanka, in Ghazipur, out of Dhaka, Bangladesh, in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, we were really able to foster a culture of understanding between the energy sector and the human social development, with deep government ownership at the local level toward inclusive energy solution. From pilot to institutional learning, Priyanta already hinted at that. There are plenty of examples. I see my time equal to 0, which means that what? I already exhausted. I thought like I needed to start it again. But anyway, fundamentally, the Madhya Pradesh loan, I know that some of you in the room were directly associated with it, was a very initial step for us. We simply started by emphasizing energy-based livelihoods. We were convinced that through the access to electricity, through the distribution project, for instance, women uptake of technology will be immediate. So we build, you access electricity, and off you go. Next thing, what you do, you go to the market, buy a rice cooker, and basically you develop a livelihood. So the answer that we learned very painfully was absolutely not. It was an absolute time lag that women, even small women entrepreneurs, were taking, first of all, to understand what energy access means, to understand the structure of the tariff, to understand the nature of the subsidies that were offered to them on the table. And only then, when women really further understood and owned the energy access agenda, they were able to develop what we hope, and we actually evaluated it as sustainable energy livelihoods. So India, Madhya Pradesh was a very initial cornerstone of an entry point, but was limited to energy-based livelihoods, and limited, for lack of other words, or focused, maybe better, on women. We learned a lot, and we also took the liberty to do an impact evaluation to assess the element that I just brought to your attention. The uptake of technology by women was not immediate, was pretty much thought through in a very logical and I would say conservative manner, because, who knows, maybe you get energy today and you don't get it tomorrow. So we really learned a lot in terms of the do's and don'ts. In Bhutan, I think we learned a further lesson. We went a little bit further deeper. There was a Japan Fund for Prosperity and Resilience called Alternative Renewable Energy Pilot Project, which was piloting small-scale solar PV system to demonstrate the viability of solar power as a sustainable energy source. And this was the important for us, we never thought about it, an income-generating opportunity. So we were able to install 3 kV of grid-tied solar PV system at approximately benefiting 500 disadvantaged rural community that the royal government was saying, we will not be able to reach out to them, so do something about it. We did. And we were able to provide livelihood. I think this model has evolved, and as you will hear from my colleague, the other major lessons learned is that we were working with the household generation of electricity, which will be feeding into the system. I think that was another major lessons learned about this decentralized energy system, not for the consumption per se, but also for the contribution to the broader grid. In the Maldives, you will hear a lot from my colleague about POISE, preparing outer islands for sustainable energy development. Obviously, it's been a very, very important project for us. Most of the time, I call Maldives, Bhutan, Sri Lanka to a certain extent as very conducive environment to really reflect and pilot test potential jewels of inclusive energy access solutions. And I do believe that the Maldives, as you will hear, it has been one of those. So we basically focused on women. If you know the Maldives a little bit, the women's development committees, and women's participation in islands energy planning, involvement in developing and implementing national energy roadmap, access to energy jobs, energy-based micro-enterprise development opportunity. And initiatives such as the solar PV, the powered ice making plants for fishery, the renewable energy-based ferries, enhanced women's livelihood and income, demonstrated the resilience to crises, including the COVID. In Nepal, I think there's been such a spectrum, as Priyanta pointed out, and as I pointed out, in terms of lessons learned. Big Lending, the SASEC Power System Expansion Project. But what I think we did, first and foremost, it was a mature relationship with the Nepal Electricity Authority, which is now shining, I think, in its own right, but also thanks to potentially the contribution of other development partners. But the work we've done with the Nepal Electricity Authority has been really nurturing the relationship with the utility. We came up with an approved by management gender equality and social inclusion strategy and operational guidelines. And as Priyanta pointed out, the evolution of this dialogue is seen even in the recent meeting a couple of weeks ago in Bhutan, where now we're talking about skill in the workforce, navigating the energy transition with the utility through the through the social inclusion and gender lenses. So from an initial efforts to simply support energy-based livelihood, we really came a long way to even be able to discuss HR practices and also skilling / development needs of the organizations. In Bangladesh, I think there wouldn't be enough time to describe the work we've done and the collaborative practices that were established, not only with the distribution, with DESCOs and many other BPBDs in the room, and the BREB, if I'm not mistaken, BREB, BBBD, and many other organizations. But fundamentally, I think the key work that we have done, and it's a little bit thanks to Reana and the team leaders in the room, was really to fundamentally understand decentralized energy system. So there was a grant, there was a publication on decentralized energy system, really inculcating in the mind of social development people the role of producer and consumer, meaning producer, was something that we really learned a lot from. So the publication, which is available online on inclusive community energy resilience in Bangladesh, it dates back 2022, presents a framework for mainstreaming JESI in electricity distribution planning and assessing resilience to climate extremes. Moving forward, I think it was already hinted, I was one of the founding members of an initiative called with the World Bank, We Power, or Women in Power. I mean, my modest use of the English language suggests that through an initial use of we as in women power, perhaps the time has come to use we as an us, as that's a little bit the ongoing discussion with the World Bank. We truly believe, I established the angle of women involvement in the energy sector, but there is so much more to contribute in terms of the comprehensiveness approach that the Energy Sector Agency and utilities can bring forward. So I think, just to give you a hint, this We Power initiative could likely expand beyond women to take elements such as disability much more seriously into the account. So it's the concept of intersectionality, starting from gender, but moving beyond. And also, we need to discuss, so Priyanka and the team, but there is a desire to expand the good practices established with the Energy Sector Agency and utilities beyond. I think we're working on a proposal to expand this cross-fertilization of experience with the transport sector and the urban development sector, both sectors being geared and being fed by the energy sector, by the energy transition, by the clean energy transition. And we've seen recently a very nice convergence, let alone a convergence of mandate within the ADB in breaking the silos and ensuring that the inclusive solutions are fully integrated. Last but not least, partnership and lessons for scale. We would not have been able, as a very goodwill, but still relatively small organization, to achieve anything without the combination, the collaboration or partnership, I would say, between the Asian Development Bank, the developing member countries' governments, particularly the energy sector utilities, and the agency. And of course, with the role of the University of Melbourne School of Engineering in facilitating the integration of these dynamics. So once again, I hope you leave this room in understanding, as we said a couple of weeks ago, that we are simply facilitating the achievement of your agenda as energy sector practitioner. We had no ideology behind the work we do, but simply driven by the fact that we do not want to contribute to leaving anyone behind in this inclusive energy solution. And I do hope that each time we wake up in the morning, particularly in the past 3 to 6 months, for lack of other further references, we do remind ourselves that at least the development interpreted by the social development team is not only about economic growth. It is about an inclusive model of economic growth, which includes an inclusive model of energy solution, leaving no one behind. So I leave you with the 4 messages that is a consolidation of the 10 years of support to the South Asia team. First, gender equality and social inclusion, or JESI, integration must be intentional and not incidental. It needs to be embedded from the onset. So there's no room for spontaneous approaches. It has to be thought through. Secondly, the context matters. The good projects are grounded locally, and I insist they're grounded locally and reinforced through regional collaboration or cross-fertilization of experience. We found the South Asia context to be very conducive, although in the past 2 weeks we saw that the proximity between Nepal and Bhutan was very intimate, and the dialogue between Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh was also very deep. There was some communality that have enabled the sub-regional debate to even go deeper. Third, utilities buy-in is essential to drive the institutional and the operational change. And last but not least, and that's I think the role of the bank or the Asia Clean Energy Forum to begin with, The knowledge platforms and peer learning are powerful bridges across sectors and across geography. So with that, as we reflect on this South Asia's pioneering work, and we're going to hear a couple of good practices, really, I encourage us all to ask, how can we ensure that energy transition deliver not just power, but empowerment for those historically excluded? That's a future we must build together, inclusive, equitable, and sustainable by design. With that, thank you very much. I think I'll go back to the audience and leave Rayana to facilitate. So thank you very much. And
Great. Thank you very much, Francesco, for that very useful and informative overview and background. Very useful and important notes. We have to hold on to that and develop that a bit more. Now, we threw together a bunch of graphs based on some ADB data, looking at the evolution of the South Asia energy sector over the last 10 years. We started at 2014, but as Priyantha pointed out, it began even earlier. But 2014 was a little bit arbitrary. I guess we just decided on a decade and to look at the trends. So I'll just show some of those, speak to those, and we can have a couple of questions, and then some great case studies from the Maldives and Bhutan with really lovely videos and slides and so on after that. So perhaps James and Sanam, you'd like to join me on stage so it doesn't feel so lonely up here. Or perhaps it might block the view, is that right? Yeah? Okay, all right. Big relief from the two of you. All right, so let's continue. So here we have, the ADB classifications, by the way, it's got this gender classification system. That has changed and been tweaked over the last 10 years. So I'm going to use a fairly generic description, and the ones that are most relevant for the energy sector is what's known as effective gender mainstreaming, where one or more outputs incorporate gender equality and social inclusion design features, and some gender elements which are not effective gender mainstreaming, but incorporate gender design features. Francesco, I hope I've got that summary okay, because this has evolved, the definition of it, over the last 10 years, and it has been quite a big discussion in terms of how we update it and tweak it and so on. So these are the ones that are relevant. Then there's a no gender elements category, which is also unfortunately relevant, but I haven't sort of highlighted that here. And then there's a top category, which is called GEN. I don't know, I can't remember what it stands for, Gender Equality Plus Plus. And that basically means your whole project is about it. So about, enhancing gender equality. And that's really not all that appropriate as a classification for the infrastructure projects, which are still about energy, which are still about transport, and so on. These are infrastructure physical systems. Okay, so here we have a distribution of the project by region over the last 10-year period. And I'm sorry I haven't spelled it out. So if you start from the left here, you have the Central Asia, East Asia, Pacific, South Asia, which is what we're looking at today, and Southeast Asia. These are the main departments. You've also got the private sector department, which works across and does energy projects as well. But I've just only included the data here for the regions, the operations in the regions. So here it's quite interesting because we have the Pacific coming out quite strong over the last 10 years. We have to look at what's going on in the Pacific. So it's around 89%. And in South Asia, we've got 77% of all the projects, energy projects in the South Asia department, with very good to good. Now we have the distribution across regions, so compared with all the energy projects over the last 10 years, which includes the private sector. And we've got South Asia contributing 14% over that last period to all the ADB energy projects. That's the very good EGM and the good some gender elements, with, again, the Pacific doing quite well, of around 10.5%. This is just to give an idea of the number of projects that we're looking at over that period. And here we're looking at the annual distribution. And I want to, there's a wealth of information here. I don't have time to go into it. But what I want to highlight is from 2020 onwards, the last few years. 2020 was a really exceptional year. What happened, there was, well, 10 projects, very good to good, EGM and some gender elements, but all the energy projects in South Asia in 2020 fell into that category, all the energy projects. So it's exceptional, but it's not impossible to do. So that was a very good year. And then there was a bit of a drop, and I think this is some of the COVID, the impact of COVID coming in there. And then we have a really interesting, and just follow the green line, which combines the two categories, the very good and the good. And here you see a steady increase. And I think this is a very positive development, really. And I think that's what we need to aim for, that steady increase, to maintain that steady increase in the next phase as well. It's all a bit, you know, there's a lot of fluctuation in the earlier phase, which is a bit of a learning phase as well. But I think this is what's really important, this trend of a steady increase that we'd like to maintain. And this is in relation to all the energy projects across the region. Again, just follow that green line, and from 2020 onwards, and you see the same pattern there. Then we dug a little bit deeper and looked at how the subsectors, energy subsectors had fared in terms of incorporating gender and social inclusion. And we have transmission and distribution leading. Then we have renewable energy, solar leading, but of course there's a lot of solar renewable energy projects that came on board the pipeline, and of course energy efficiency. There's a little bit of wind there as well. So these are the subsectors, the three subsectors, which were the leading subsectors in incorporating social inclusion. In some senses, this is not a big surprise. We know with distribution and expansion of distribution networks, to especially for rural electrification, there's more community engagement and community participation, and there are activities and interventions that we can include. Now, the renewable energy, I think this was a little bit more deliberate. I think we had already started to learn, had some lessons under our belt, and then we looked at how we would apply that in the emerging solar generation area. And these were essentially solar parks, some large solar park projects. This is the sum gender elements, which essentially follows the same pattern of those three subsectors. Then we looked at what were some of the gender design features for each of those subsectors. That is transmission distribution, renewable energy solar, and energy efficiency. And here we're looking at the top category of effective gender mainstreaming. And the three that come out is training and capacity building, one of the main interventions, community outreach and awareness raising on safe and efficient energy use. So that comes out in the solar power and transmission distribution. And here we have in energy efficiency, again, training and capacity building, and community outreach again. The other one that placed in the top four was gender responsive needs assessment. Now, I should explain that the training and capacity building covered all the range of work, right? The technical training to have new jobs created with targets for women in the utilities and in the industry, livelihoods development, energy-related, what we call productive energy use. So with electrification, energy-based enterprises, generally micro and small enterprises, and here we really promoted enterprises led by women, and then capacity development for the institutions on gender awareness raising, because you can't actually, you have to motivate implementing agencies and the utilities to carry out these interventions. Community outreach awareness raising, safety became an issue, especially in the earlier phase of rural electrification, because we found in newly electrified rural communities, there was no understanding of the safe use of electricity, and there were accidents. And the utilities actually fed that information back to us, and we needed to, and they organized user awareness programs on the safe use of electricity. So that was an important lesson in terms of rural electrification, certainly. The gender responsive needs assessment, it was really interesting how that developed over the years. So it was initially looking at project sites and what were some of the impediments to women's participation in projects. And then that developed to looking at particular technologies that were being rolled out and women's needs and access in relation to those technologies that were being rolled out. And there's an interesting example here of India, of electric vehicles targeting women in sort of peri-urban and rural areas. And the GESI needs assessment looked at this question of the technology that was rolled out and in relation to women's access, women's needs, and so on. So there was a development of the gender assessments that we were doing. All right, learnings and takeaways. I think the main activities are still very relevant, frankly. Capacity building and training. And this has come through in the last several conferences and workshops that we did. Last year in Sri Lanka, a regional conference, the national conference in Chennai in India, and then Francesca and I and Priyantha, and Sonam and Nazmon and so on. We've just come back from workshops in Bangladesh and in Dhaka and in Bhutan. And one of the key challenges that have been outlined, and this is a pillar of the work going forward, is skills development for the future workforce in emerging green industries. This is a huge question. It covers everything from policy to technology to employment and training and so on. The second aspect, raising community awareness, I suppose you could say this is social license to operate. I think this is still something that we need to be aware of. And looking at the pipeline in terms of women's participation in industry, starting with secondary education and girls in STEM and women in industry. And this is also related to this women in engineering and power that Francesca mentioned. And then the GESI responsive needs assessment. Again, Francesco mentioned all these as important lessons. And these really do continue to be important, especially as we roll out new technology. Look at some of the examples of the GESI assessments that have been done, such as electric vehicles in India, and there would be others too. Low carbon energy, this is evident. The low carbon energy transition provides opportunities for inclusive solutions, especially given where the evolution of the grid towards decentralized distributed energy resources, where demand is active and not passive, and you've got more prosumers and consumers, and developing the workforce in this regard. Energy efficiency must incorporate end-user engagement. But we also need to better capture some of these elements. Resilience. There's a lot of work being done on resilience in the energy sector. And we need to be able to capture this aspect of resilience better, not just in terms of underground cables and so on, but also in terms of the relationship to the community. And we call this community energy resilience. Project effectiveness, we have stated that the incorporation of inclusion, social inclusion, Jesse, if you like, does improve project effectiveness. We need to find ways of measuring this, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Policy engagement and development. Energy efficiency, by the way, shows quite a bit of policy there, and we need to look into this a little bit more. And workforce development. Where the technology is being rolled out, what is the impact on the workforce? What are the new jobs that people are being skilled up for? Are these, what are some of the early results even of this? We need to be able to find ways of capturing this as well. And this is where the case studies are really important. And so if I could call on James and Sonam to come up here, and I will introduce you. Both of you can share the stage, please. I have to get your titles. All right, we'll have James Colin Karaj, who's our Principal Energy Specialist for the ADB, and he'll be looking at the case study in the Maldives, where there is an inclusive energy transition underway, the Assure project and the Poised project. And after that, we'll have the case study from Bhutan, from Sonam Zam, Energy Project Officer of the Bhutan Resident Mission, ADB, who will be looking at the Alternative Renewable Energy Pilot Project. Who'd like to go first? Have your pick. James, please.
Good morning, and thanks for joining this session. I'll just quickly go into, then since this is a deep dive, so I'm taking you to the Maldives. So I think, basically, that's why I'm taking you to the ocean as well to do the deep dive. So beautiful place, and these are not these are photographs taken from my mobile phones. So if you happen to be in Maldives, please visit Outer Islands. I can see some of them from Pacific. Probably they can relate it really well. So, and these guys are not doing feasibility assessments or technical assessments. They're just finding the way out there. So I will just go into the next one. So actually, Maldives has over 1,000 islands, outer islands, and out of which 187 are inhabited. So which is scattered around 1,000 kilometers in the Indian Ocean. So widely scattered and dispersed islands. I won't go into details because I have several slides. So, and this is the energy sector overview. I did not include, it is heavily dependent on imported fossil fuels. I did not include at the renewable energy share. This is just the fossil fuel share. It's just over 5%. And if you can see that diesel contributes 81% of the fossil fuel contribution, and which is 60% of it is used for power generation. And it consumes around 13 to 14% of its GDP. So the agenda, what ADB does in Maldives, and how our projects relate to inclusive transition. So there are two projects which ADB has. One is the Poised, which was in the final stages of implementation, and the other one is Assure. We just started the implementation. It's just an extension of the Poised project, is the Assure project, Accelerated Sustainable System Using Renewable Energy. I just give you a glimpse on the ongoing Poised project, where we have mobilized close to 135 million, contributions from ADB, CTF, JFJCM, EU, EIB. So we try to gather financing from several partners, bilateral partners and international partners, to ensure that we can build a meaningful project for smaller countries. And I don't go into technical details on the project. Probably, the technical details are not required, but if anyone wants to know more details on these projects, I'm happy to provide. And the POISE project helped to introduce solar PV in most of the outer islands. So before that, most of the outer islands did not have solar PV. It started in 2014, and implementation is about to complete now. And which supports implementation in 160 outer islands to cover at least 30 to 70% of day peak demand. So that's the outcome level indicators. And Assure project, which was approved in 2023, where we tried to bring more battery storage and bring in private sector de-risking facilities, and as well as gender inclusiveness in a broader way. And I'm just giving a sense of how difficult it is going to an outer island. We normally take a ferry, the boat from the hotel to the airport. Then you take a domestic flight to go to an atoll. Then you take a car to go to the ferry, and then take a ferry, go to the outer island. So once you are in outer island, then you have to go to the project site. So this is how difficult it is to reach an outer island. So implementing projects in 160 outer island is almost like implementing 160 projects. So it's not easy. So how ADB interventions support energy transition and how inclusive we are. So I just giving the history of the power sector in the Maldives. Most of the power plants were inefficient run by diesel gensets. And the distribution lines, we normally call it spider web. It's just, they just connect to the houses whenever they want. So, and what are we doing? So wherever there is a possibility, this is what POISE project and Assure project is doing. I'm just going into details. And again, this photograph, you can see that the land is scarce in outer islands. So we need to ensure that we coexist. Normally, we identify places where we can install solar PV. Of course, roof spaces, and we don't have roof spaces. This is a jetty where there was no shelter. So we told the island council that we can prepare a shelter and we can also install rooftop solar. So similarly, this is also rooftop solar. The shed is made, over the top is rooftop solar, and this is a gymnasium. So, you use the space wherever it is possible. So this is how we coexist in outer islands. So entire project, I would say, is renewable energy. It is energy transition. I will not go into details, and I'll go what are the things we are doing in the Maldives. POISE project introduced solar PV battery energy management system covering 160 outer islands in an optimal way, because we don't have sufficient money to make it 50% by energy, but we are trying to introduce. And the second project which I mentioned, which was the Assure project, where we have several cross-sectoral interventions, where our solar PV-based ice-making plants, because outer islands, we cannot just provide them energy just for electricity, because there are activities which are basically some of the islands are only 50 or 100 kilowatt capacity. So, and ice making plant consumes probably 20, 30 kilowatts. So it's a huge demand for them. So we need to ensure that what are the activities we do and how we decarbonize them. And we are also having the first solar PV battery ferry to support transport. And we also have an agriculture intervention in Maldives where desalination plant is provided to irrigate agriculture activities. And we are also working on ocean-based technologies and small wind and advanced battery storage wherever possible. And what we are doing on inclusiveness, actually, when the first POISE project started, the first step is community outreach, where we went to, before the project begins, there is a community outreach program where we have consultations with several stakeholders, including women development councils, including island council. All those we already covered for more than 130 islands. and which is about including 13,000 participants, out of which at least 15% are going, and it is still continuing. And the second step is, the first one is awareness, then the second step is going to the schools, providing career guidance for students who can later become part of energy sector. So, basically we have covered more than 150 outer islands and covering the students in thousands of numbers, actually, approximately 7,000 numbers now. And whenever there is an opportunity, we also provide training in the outer islands, especially for Women Development Council. And we integrate our program with ongoing government program to ensure that the participation is good. And then we also insist the utilities to provide opportunity for employment when there is a possibility to take women, and they also listen to us whenever we started doing the training. So there are at least 30 women employed by the utilities during this period, and we have provided several trainings. And this is one of the intervention I would like to highlight, how we supported a cross-sectoral intervention, also to support inclusive transition. This is an ice-making plant, which is run by Solar PV, and the ice-making plant is operated by Women Development Council, and the Solar PV is operated by the utility. So, the Women Development Council sell this ice to fishermen, and they use that profits to run and on and operate the ice-making plants. So it was very successful. And, I did not go into details, again, technical details on that, because, we have already replicating this in another 4 islands, and we hope that the government will replicate more. So it's what we learned. Basically, if the intervention is going to be useful and we can replicate, and probably the stakeholders will replicate again. And as I mentioned earlier, we also identified an island which is one of the largest agricultural island in Maldives, where we are installing solar PV to support desalination. Actually, to support desalination for agriculture. It is not for drinking. So the desalination plant will mainly support agriculture, together with some activities such as rainwater harvesting. We will be we have been finalized the design. The tender is in progress now for this one. And what are the lessons and opportunities? Actually, we always need to look into where the transition need to look into, and it should be really context-based. Whatever fits in Maldives may not fit in Sri Lanka, may not fit in India. So it should depend on where we are, and we should not, wait for very large interventions to take place. We start from small, identify areas which can be immediately, immediately taken up, and try to transform these ideas into actual interventions, which the people can really feel that it is helpful for them. Otherwise, it is not. We cannot replicate. There should be interventions which can be supportive. So, and there are many ideas which are floating, but we need to, as Rahana earlier mentioned, it is important that the ideas should be grounded. Otherwise, we cannot see real interventions. And I just wanted to highlight that in 2021. The POISE project was recognized by the Greening the Islands Council as one of the best projects for its interventions. And so we also do our part, and this is, we do more than just the projects. And finally, thank you. There is a video. That's why I tried to rush the slides. So they can play the video. It's just 5 minutes. Thank you.
The Maldives consist of about 1,200 coral islands, spread across 26 atolls in the Indian Ocean. Home to over 500,000 people inhabiting 187 islands, Maldives has achieved universal access to electricity in 2008. Solar power has rapidly grown from less than 100 kilowatts in 2008 to over 53 megawatts in 2023, producing 5% of the electricity consumed by the country. The government of the Maldives has pledged to develop renewable energy systems to cover 33% of the nation's electricity needs by 2028. ADB-2 projects, Poised and Assure, play a major role in energy transition in Maldives. Both projects include a strong emphasis on social inclusiveness, gender equality, and on developing sustainable tourism, agriculture, and fisheries. Since 2014, Poised has been replacing inefficient diesel generation with smart, hybrid renewable systems in 160 outer islands. Poised also includes piloting a renewable energy-based ferry and community ice-making plants. Poised actively engages the community through renewable energy campaigns, student career guidance, and gender-inclusive consultations on opportunities for micro-enterprises. Outreach programs in cooperation with women's development committees have covered most of the 160 islands. Hundreds of women have received training from utilities Fennica and Stelco on renewable energy solutions, while thousands of students have learned about energy career opportunities.
iruge alin hakata ufadda nizam meduwerko karantu ufadda sola meduwerko ragitun ice plant ay rashuga horumaki ragitun nal livigen devara bod kuriyerum ekama galuguluga bol kura den ekamuga sabon rashuga anhenunna shafire henunna hasa ko masver kamuga dairain ane wara boda wazifak fursatu iturugen hingajje den mifada kanta tahugga ane deruga faratta kunde hitere kama arabada shukuru dannaman adi aluganu gabulu kuragoto game fada kantatta kurieruma fada faratta ku magu fahivegen dana kama ummedu kura.
The Assure project effectively started in 2024, building on Poised's achievements. Assure focuses on increasing private investments and promoting social inclusivity and gender equality. It includes a women's leadership program to enhance skills in energy planning and management. Assure aims to boost income generation activities, especially for women, by promoting innovative farming and renewable energy-powered efficient irrigation systems.
Assure project aligns with the Maldives' vision for the energy sector, ensuring not only efficient, reliable, and sustainable energy, but also a commitment to shared benefits, leaving no community or region behind.
As the Maldives charts its course towards a sustainable and prosperous future, Poised and Assure stand as a beacon of change, paving the way towards a just energy transition for the Maldives.
Good morning, everyone. Let me take you from the white oceans to the high mountains in Bhutan. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, and dear friends. In the heart of the Himalayas, Bhutan is blessed with abundant natural resources, but like many other mountainous countries, we also face unique energy challenges. While we have a hydropower potential of more than 33,000 megawatts, our installed capacity is just at 3,491 megawatts, and our firm power drops to less than 700 megawatts during the dry winter months. Now, this represents the bulk of our tapped energy potential, so we have long been aware that relying on one single source of energy leaves our people vulnerable to climate variability, seasonal shortages, and rising demands from a growing economy. Recognizing the need for energy diversification, ADB has partnered with Bhutan to explore its renewable energy resources. This brings us to our case study, which is the Alternative Renewable Energy Pilot Project. But before we dive into the case study, I would like to talk about the other potential renewable energy sources in the country. Firstly, the wind energy with the potential of 100 megawatts. We have installed capacity of only 0.6 megawatts. And that is because we have the challenge of implementation in our very mountainous terrain. Solar energy with a potential of 12,000 megawatts. The installed capacity right now is only about 1.5 megawatts, but we do have a lot of upcoming solar energy projects in the pipeline, which will increase its potential to about maybe 50 megawatts in the near future. So this grant is supported by the Japan Fund for Prosperous and Resilient Asia and the Pacific with a 3 million grant. It was started in 2020, and the initial scope was to cover about 300 households and would end in June of this year. But because there was some savings, we were able to cover more households, and now the project has been extended up till December of 2026. This project goes beyond simply installing solar panels. It's about creating a comprehensive model for inclusive clean energy solutions that addresses energy security, economic opportunity, and social equity in one integrated approach. The project demonstrates that when communities are equipped with the right tools and support, they become the architect of their own development. This project targets about 514 households in the rural Bhutan, selected through a process of multidimensional poverty index, ensuring that those who need the support most are prioritized. Every household receives a 3 kilowatt grid-connected solar PV system, but innovation really lies in the project's inclusive approach. They aren't just energy consumers, they become the energy producers, prosumers who can use what they need and sell the surplus energy to the grid. Now, while the income generated from the surplus energy is not life-changing, but it also gives them the opportunity to kind of create products that increases their values. For example, they could convert their milk products into cheese and butter, or their potatoes into chips, thereby increasing their income and moving towards a more sustainable income generation source. But true sustainability, however, requires more than just innovation. It requires the community engagement and institutional support. The women here are trained in the operation and maintenance of the solar PV panels. And the project also has established a comprehensive framework in the form of a power purchase agreement, in the form of a prosumer agreement, where all the 4 stakeholders, the beneficiaries themselves, the Bhutan Power Corporation, the Department of Energy, and the local government are involved. There is also mandatory insurance and bank accounts that encourages savings to kind of fund the maintenance in case they need to replace the inverter, thereby ensuring the sustainability of the system. While the numbers and policies tells one story, but the real impact can be heard from the voices of the people whose lives have been transformed. So in the next 6 minutes, you will hear directly from the implementing agency, which is the Department of Energy under the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, but more importantly from the beneficiaries themselves, the farmers, the mothers, and the entrepreneurs who have now become energy producers and community leaders. You can play the video now? Yeah, thank you.
Bhutan depends largely on hydroelectricity for all of its socio-economic developments, from household cooking to powering large industries. However, the growing impacts of climate change are depleting water sources and affecting the hydrological regimes of the country and hence electricity generation. To ensure energy security, sustainability, and climate resiliency, a significant step has been taken by the Department of Energy under the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources in promoting alternative renewable energy resources such as solar and wind energy, small hydro plants, solar water heating systems, and biogas to complement the existing hydropower plants. The department is now advancing further by piloting and adopting solar prosumer concept.
Globally, there has been an increase in electricity end users, so-called as prosumers. So essentially what it means is that anyone can produce electricity at the same time consume electricity. So in a way, then that sort of a system allows for ones to meet their own household energy requirements, and at the same time, whatever surpluses are there, they can feed into the grid. By earning a revenue from the surpluses that gets injected to the grid, they can actually make use of that revenue for meeting their socio-economic activities. So in a way, we are empowering these rural folks.
To pilot this project, the Department of Energy has received grant financing from the Government of Japan through the Japan Fund for a Prosperous and Resilient Asia and the Pacific, with support from the Asian Development Bank.
We received a generous grant support of $3 million, and with this grant, we are piloting the prosumer concept by installing 3 kilowatt grid-connected solar PV systems to around 500 disadvantaged rural households. This project aims not only to improve the rural livelihood, but also promotes gender equality and social inclusion. Women who mostly stays at home and manages the household chores are provided with basic operation and maintenance skills and are encouraged to take active role in handling and managing these solar PV systems.
As a local partner, we stood firm in engaging as many local manpower as possible. So currently we have about 27 decibels engaged for this project, and about 67 local manpowers guided and led by 11 Indian technicians across 3 districts in the country.
Solar project di ikalo mahib dauch bachin HD Mahasu Chirala Lada di Putishin ko Richo Tele Putishin ko Jomatsuachin Lamjo Matsuachinla Te Chigale Pash Shingri Ten Amebedola. Dernaba La Be Beudalo Ten Solar Gicole Nyamung Te Tobe Seshunila.
Solar photovoltaic technology shines as a beacon of hope for villagers in Bhutan. After the commissioning, the solar PV systems are handed over to the beneficiaries through a structured prosumer agreement, which includes power purchase arrangement, mandatory insurance, and revenue savings to ensure the system's functionality and sustainability throughout its economic lifespan.
Mechi tiru tiru patego, teta Teledon tiru zoni ki tega hebda la sosu bebego, te da tuzumbe da solar sube de me top, tele anale te tiru top.
Solar ge opter gopa solar sube pagam gopa shebda phale pam da hangthrong hangdab gisa ni nam tuk thulang padabra an thongjong ni thinong chama to got paga na misamiga hempa thurthong ma shunjala aibaka bijil chone borok tega oni unit ke chongmin chongni tirnyong be bakong chot be gelai ko oni thur hagoni nasa ai misir nyam chungba ka kewa zoktan chuma shona senam chingchung ohe ani chojon ani nammi sami chonong pyo
यस्तो हामीलाई यस्तो खुसी हामी नाति पनातिको लागि अझै पनि खुसियाली छौं.
By becoming solar prosumers, individual households not only reduce the electricity burden on the government, but also secure a more resilient and sustainable future for themselves.
Thank you so much, Sonam and James. for those case studies and those lovely videos. It really brings what we've discussed to life and reminds us of why we commit to this work and how important the social aspects are to the energy sector. I'll open up for discussion now or any questions of the speakers. I understand that one of the project manager or project officer for the Bhutan case studies here. I don't know if you'd like to make any comments and make a contribution. This is a chance to do that, and we'd appreciate hearing from you. And if there's anyone else who'd like to comment and contribute, question, there's one over there. You can come up here and ask a question, or we could get some mics, perhaps if someone can get some roving mic going.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to, my question is for the case from Maldives. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. As for someone from a low-lying island, your presentation was really an inspiring one for us. I'm here to represent the South Pacific Islands. We are mostly low-lying islands with the same case as your island. So my question is, what was the most challenging factor you faced as a small island in studying a project that would include many sectors, as you mentioned, such as marine, agriculture, and also in the inclusive of gender and the culture in your island? And my second part of the question is, what would be your advice, please?
So, actually, when we started the the poised intervention, thank you, first of all, thank you very much for the question. And when we started the interventions, actually, we also have the same issues. The first when we started the project, we were not able to find roof spaces. Nobody wanted to give the roof spaces, and nobody wanted to give the land because the land is very scarce in outer islands. So what is important is the consultation. So when we went, we never started the project. We started the consultations. So we went to WDCs, went to our island councils, went to schools, even clinics. So then we told them that what we are going to do and how it's going to help them. And they also told us that, okay, this is what they are facing. So it's a two-way approach. So we told them that, okay, we will help you in some way. So we need your help or support to transform. So it's important is the consultations and probably leaving no one behind in the consultations as well. So that's critical. And I have been traveled to probably at least 20 outer islands in Maldives. And in some of the very smaller ones, actually, some of the island community, women who come and say that now we can't hear noises during the daytime. And they don't smell smoke during the daytime. That's more heartwarming for me as a project officer because the diesel is not running in the daytime. So that's I would say that more consultations and identify the right people. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. We've also got a couple of online questions. Hold on, I'll pass their complex. I'll pass it on to Francesco.
Sorry, which is fantastic, but they're extremely complex questions. So thank you, Rihanna. One is about gender-based violence for assessing energy project. It's a complex, and I don't want to divert from the focus. I do know that the Gender Equality Division is focusing on the rolling out with the Safeguards people on SEA, which is the translation of the concept of gender-based violence. And I do appreciate that there are pilots projects on engaging with the energy sector utilities on issues that pertain to their response or contribution to addressing gender-based violence. To the best of my understanding and knowledge, at least as far as I was involved in the South Asia department more directly on gender-related issues, there were no good practices related to the utility energy sector. But I'm sure that whoever is the person who wrote the question, you can write to me and I'll put you in touch with the Gender Equality Division, more specifically with James, who's in charge of that. On the socioeconomic barrier to inclusive clean energy access, that's another very, very complex questions. It's very hard to reply. I mean, I do believe that what we do as a social development team, and I think my point was extremely clearly pointed out, we are driven by some commitments and potentially personal, corporate, or professional ideas, but we're not driven by any ideology. So in terms of addressing the socioeconomic barriers to inclusive clean energy, there are many, many reasons. There are policy barriers, there are legal regulatory barriers that pertain to the responsibilities of the government, and they're better handled by my energy sector colleagues. There are socio-cultural elements, as were clearly pointed out today, in terms of the ability to engage with women and other disadvantaged groups that relate to the responsibility of the team that I am part of. So to me, it's a combination of a technical / energy and social / gender response to these. So I think together, based on each of our roles, we can. I hope that the person who wrote the email remains perhaps a little bit more convinced after hearing James, Sonam, Rihanna, and myself, that together we can navigate the policy, legal, regulatory, and social cultural barriers. But at the very heart of it, it is a desire to respond to the government's driven policy and responses to their own development needs, including the energy sector needs. This is all I think in summary that I can say, but look forward to more direct engagement with the question.
Thank you, Francesco. I think we've probably got time for one more question or brief comment before we go to closing remarks and finish the session on time, which is good. Yes, please.
Thanks. I'm from Bangladesh and I have a question. Both of you can answer. So what's the lifetime of this solar unit and how the maintenance procedure during the lifetime? Even after the lifetime, what's the plan for to continue the process? Thank you.
Actually, both the projects for the Maldives, I think for Bhutan, probably Sonam can explain. The solar PV, the technical specifications, allowing degradation, it is 20 years lifetime. So, of course, when the project started, Maldives did not have a recycling plan for solar. So we come out with a procedure for recycling, but we have included in the contract document that the bidder need to take back this, including the batteries, because it is very, 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 very difficult to recycle in Maldives. And so that's already built in the bid documents that it is the responsibility of the bidder to take back for recycling. So that's one. And because some of these installations have already been operating for 8 years, so there has been some degradation, but it is very minor, and most of them are operated by utility. Nothing has been operated by community in the case of Maldives, because we develop projects and work closely with the utility to ensure that these elements are transferred to the community. So the operation maintenance are taken care by the utility.
Okay, fine. And the future plan after 20 years? The society will be
so that's because of course basically when we started the project in Maldives, it's already mentioned that basically we had only installations of 50 kilowatt. So now we have installations amounting to 56 megawatt. In a small country. So the future plans is it's all self-driven, and out of which 30 megawatt is from the private sector. Okay. So basically, so that will really help.
Okay. Let me try and respond to your question also. So these installations have a payback period which is much shorter than the life of the equipment. So let's say 20 years, you're saying. So after, they would pay back in, say, 8 to 10 years is the payback period. After 20 years, you can opt to install new, similar systems, but there would be availability of better technology because the technology is evolving very fast.
Yes, yes.
So given that the system has already more than recovered its cost, you can then invest in new technologies.
Okay, thank you, Sujata.
Okay, just to elaborate further on the Bhutan's case, since this is a grant project, and like I mentioned in my presentation, the revenue generated from the earnings, because they are able to sell it back to the grid, the surplus. So from the revenue generated from the excess energy, the project has kind of facilitated the creation of bank accounts where they can save some of the money, and also there's a mandatory requirement to have a recurring deposit account. So from that money, they can replace the inverter in about 10 years. But because my project manager is also here, I'll like her to add some more points on that.
Okay, so for the routine operation and maintenance, like the cleaning and all, so we have trained all the beneficiaries, especially the women who mostly stays at home, so on the O&M requirements, so they will be taking care of the O&M requirements. And for others where you need to purchase the spare parts and all those things, like Sonam said, we have educated the beneficiaries on the revenue savings and the O&M requirements and all, so they will be taking care of that one. And additionally, under the prosumer agreement, there is a mandatory insurance that we have arranged, and we also discussed with the insurance company, and then we got like a 50-60% discount on the insurance. So in case of force majeures, the insurance company will be taking care of that. And with regard to the end of life, so this is a government-initiated project. Of course, it's funded by government of Japan and ADB, but because this is the government-led project, we have a government department called the Department of Procurement and Properties. So under that, they take care of the national assets, the properties and everything. So end of life, we facilitate, and that department actually collects and then disposes it properly, whether it's recycling or anything. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that concludes the question and answer for this session, and thank you very much. But we've got closing remarks coming up as well, but thank you for those questions, very important, tough questions. We don't pretend we have all the solutions. We have this experience that we're sharing with you. We have some insights that we're sharing with you, but there's a wealth of information there that we need to tap into and examine a little bit more. And now it's with real pleasure that I'd like to welcome Sujata Gupta, Director, Sector Group Energy for South Asia of the ADB, to conclude the session with her remarks. Sujata, please.
Thank you, Rehana. So I think this was a very difficult session because, the videos were so interesting and so beautiful that I was finding it difficult to focus on what was being said. I was looking more at the pictures both from Bhutan and Maldives. So it was like, but again, a very good morning to everyone, and to all the participants, our sincere thanks for your engagement and valuable contributions to this deep dive workshop, where discussions were held on inclusive energy, clean energy solutions in South Asia, reflections on the past experience and lessons for the future. And as the question indicated, we are already looking at the future 20 years from now. So thank you for your question. So this session aimed to reflect on the experiences integrating gender and social inclusion interventions in the South Asia energy sector, and highlighted some of the key lessons. So gender equality and social inclusion, as we call it, GESI, interventions have been pioneered in ADB's South Asia energy sector portfolio over the last 10 years. And many of these projects have become good practice case studies for inclusive energy solutions. Rehana's presentation examined the trends over the last 10 years, including an exceptional 2020, where all South Asia energy projects were classified as very good or good gender-based interventions. She also examined the energy subsectors which fared well, such as solar-based renewable energy projects. Francesco highlighted some of the key projects, the tools that were developed, and the role of lateral learning capacity development workshops, all of which have played a key role in supporting the South Asia energy sector efforts. The case studies from Maldives and Bhutan discussed by James and Sonam provided real-life examples of how this has been done in practice, and as I said earlier, a big distraction when watching the videos. So along with Priyanta, and these presenters are some of the practitioners who have played an important role in contributing to the strong results of integrating GESI. So I repeat again, GESI is our gender equality and social inclusion intervention. So GESI in our South Asia energy sector, something that we are very proud of. And some of the key lessons and takeaways highlighted by the speakers include GESI integration must be intentional and not incidental. Very important takeaway. Context matters. Good projects are grounded locally. Third, collaboration across the energy sector and the gender team was and is essential for these initiatives to be successful. And again, it can't just be done by the ADB teams. Utility buy-in is essential to drive institutional and operational change. The clean energy transition is actually providing real opportunities for consumers and community participation and empowerment of the communities, as we saw and as we've heard during the day. Knowledge platforms and peer learning are important to contribute to the replication of these efforts. And this meeting is one of those efforts. So we hope the participants here will take some of these takeaways and try to see how we can implement it in our own countries. And given this last takeaway on knowledge platforms and peer learning, we in South Asia have a responsibility to share this knowledge across ADB's energy operations. So I'm not putting the entire responsibility on you, but there is a responsibility for us in South Asia Energy to replicate and scale up these lessons and initiatives across ADB. So once again, I would like to conclude by thanking all the speakers for their contributions today and all participants. Big thanks to our partners for their collaboration and support, and in particular, the University of Melbourne's Nuzal Institute, Rehana, and the team, ADB team, led by Francesco, for organizing this important and impactful session. Thank you all.